Why should we learn about the history of medicine? It's a question I asked myself not too long ago, and the answer is that forewarned is forearmed. This documentary will reveal how modern medicine is still affected by the actions of cynics and bigots over a century after they began directing our future into the gutter. Before we begin, ask yourself how much out of 10 you trust mainstream medicine. Let's see how long that lasts. All the way back in 1907, a survey of medical schools in America was taken up by Abraham Flexner. Upon the survey's completion in 1910, he declared that allopathic medicine, that is to say pharmaceutical drug, was by far the best form, and that natural and holistic healings were of almost no worth. Flexner stated that there were too many medical practitioners. His recommendations made becoming a doctor profoundly harder and resulted in 600 medical schools being shut down in the span of 8 years. That translates to 75 medical schools closed per year, or a little over 6 per month, or 3 every 2 weeks. The number of graduates fell by 66% while the population rose. The report made medical training far narrow-minded. For comparison, imagine if someone was taking a beauty course and was only taught how to style their hair. Or if plane mechanics were trained only in how to screw properly. It gets worse as Flexner was asked to create the report by the AMA, which was at that time being run by George H. Simmons, who worked as secretary and general manager of the Journal of the AMA. Before moving on to Simmons, let's take a closer look at the Flexner report to see some of its greatest hits. Flexner stated that homeopathy was quackery and had no place in medicine. In our suppressed medical technology iceberg, we pointed out that in 1854, the London Homeopathic Hospital had a 16% mortality rate, while the nearby Middlesex Hospital had a 53% mortality rate. The cholera epidemic was of course stopped by John Snow. Dr. Snow figured out the weakness of that epidemic. It was just like Andrew Tate. For all the bluster and all the threat, behind all of that, we found just another one-pump chump. If that isn't enough, homeopathy is recognised by the government of India, which has healed millions with it. So Flexner has been blown out of the water by a nation that was, at the time of his report, ruled by an English monarch. That's humiliating. In Flexner's view, chiropractic medicine was also useless and not worthy of being given to the American public. Do you even need me to tell you that this is ridiculous? At the time of me writing this, the United States has over 70,000 chiropractors. Flexner also engaged in mudslinging towards osteopathic medicine. In simple terms, he said that massage has no value. Speaking from personal experience, I've dislocated my vertebrae a few times and had to have them put back in, and they work absolutely fine. Also, osteopathic therapy can be described as working out. If he thinks that has no value... So is it still for suckers? Seems you can't put the flex in Flexner. The final victim of Flexner's tirade was electric forms of therapy, which are today used in surgery and for pain relief. Examples include the TENS machine and muscle stimulation devices in physiotherapy. Flexner was talking spiteful gibberish from start to finish, and if he said this today, he'd be spat on in public or trolled online. Possibly the dumbest statement on the medical industry since this quote from The Rise and Fall of a Scientific Genius. If that wasn't bad enough, it seems Flexner took inspiration from Cecil Rhodes, with statements including,
A well-taught Negro sanitarian would be immensely useful. An essentially untrained Negro wearing an MD degree is dangerous.
He also stated,
Now that the women are freely admitted to the medical profession, it is clearly they show decreasing inclination to enter it. More schools in all sections are open for them, fewer attend, fewer graduate.
a reminder, this man was selected by the AMA to influence the minds of an entire nation. Imagine if today the same report came out, its popularity would mirror that of a P. Diddy comeback tour. Under Simmons' rule, the AMA began restyling itself using some new policies, one of which was the organization's funding being solely directed by him. George Simmons also decided the best man to serve as his right-hand man was Morris Fishbein, who he hired in 1913. Think about this. George Simmons ran the Journal of the American Medical Association. You'd expect of a man with that role to have an education in medicine, and indeed Simmons proudly stated that he was trained by the Rotunda Hospital of Dublin. An odd statement, being as they were not authorised to give out medical licenses. Reminds me of that time I got my degree in Arabic from Sandhurst Military Academy. Simmons also claimed he spent a year and a half in hospitals in London, but didn't reveal what he was doing there, or even if he was on the giving or receiving end of medical care. Simmons later received a medical degree from Rush Medical College via the mail, although there was no record of him ever being present. Simmons and Fishbein, the match made in hell, then created the Council on Pharmacy and Chemistry, which worked alongside the FDA. Under Simmons, they aligned the actions of the AMA with the desires of the government. You can still see this effect today, as this is taken straight from the FDA's website. We also learn that according to the books Murder by Injection, the story of medical conspiracy against America, and Rockefeller Medicine Men, Medicine and Capitalism in America, some very serious accusations were made. Take note that I'm not saying these are definitely true, but I will relay them. According to these books, the AMA gave their seal of approval to companies that paid them to do so. Let that sink in. The AMA was saying that they approved of drugs because they were being paid to say that they were good. The AMA couldn't even keep a united front as they drove away Dr. Andrew Ivy, an enraged Wallace Abbott, who, having made Abbott saline laxatives in 1908, was making enormous money. But the AMA took action against them, going so far as to call them the Alkaline Cult. Dr. Sebi called, he wants his band name back. Between 1907 and 1909, George Simmons waged war on Abbott via the media. Simmons called Abbott a sellout, whose company was not interested in helping the public. Rather, it was a cynical organization only interested in making money. This is on par with Jimmy Savile, talking about how he's a blessing to children. Abbott fought back by releasing a 48-page defense called An Appeal for a Square Deal, in which he accused Simmons of being the mastermind of an ambition to undermine the power of physicians. It is said that Wallace Abbott showed Simmons a document that showed Simmons had been faking his medical degrees, allowing doctors to get away with medical negligence, and sneaky feeling his colleagues. Following this, Abbott received all the help the AMA could provide. After years spent being obstructive and adversarial to countless people in the medical field, Simmons finally met his match in... his match, the wife. Simmons grew tired of his wife and opted to poison her either to insanity or suicide. After many months, she found the courage to take legal action against him. In a highly publicized trial in 1924, the wife proved in court that he had tried to have her framed for insanity.
If I were not mad, I could have helped you. Whatever you had done, I could have pitied and protected you. But because I am mad, I hate you. Because I am mad, I have betrayed you, and because I am mad, I'm rejoicing in my heart without a shred of pity, without a shred of regret, watching you go with glory in my heart.
This led to books, plays, and even films, chief among them being Gaslight in 1944 that showed this, as poisoning the wife was surprisingly common in the early 1900s. The trial caused Simmons' career to suffer death by unpopularity. He left the AMA in 1924 and handed the keys of the kingdom to Uncle Fester before to Morris Fishbein before retiring. We promised in our Royal Rife documentary that we'd cover the sins of Fishbein. Well, now here we go. In the absence of Simmons, Fishbein began fully taking the piss. He made sure that whenever the AMA was mentioned, they would also sing his praise. Using his position, he launched dozens of private enterprises, including book publishing, lecturing, and writing feature newspaper columns. But listening to Fishbein talk about what should and should not be done in medicine is akin to listening to a cookery demonstration by Jeffrey Dahmer, if you ask me. With a salary of $24,000, which is $248,000 in today's money, he became the playboy of the 1930s. His children were supervised by a French governess, while he regularly attended first nights at theatres. He had full control over all the publications of the AMA and kept his vice-like grip on its actions while continuing to quash various opponents. Some of his finest moments are as follows. In 1933, Fishbein told Chicago businessmen not to talk about amoebic dysentery, ensuring he made money from the World's Fair. In doing so, hundreds of tourists visited the World's Fair and went back to their homes with the sickness. The head of the AMA would rather make a quick buck by making you take a massive dump against your own will. In 1938, Fishbein funded Philip Hoyland against Royal Raymond Rife, giving him the money to sue Rife using access privileges he didn't have because he got fired for screwing around with the machine like Simmons did with his secretary. The English doctors that received the machines had this to say. For you Americans who can't understand the upper-class accent, I'll translate. We're not happy. At the courtroom, Hoyland made himself look ridiculous. No, don't make me voice this. No, don't make me voice this.
Don't take out my British charm unit. Without that, I'm nothing but a boorish American clod.
I had property, real estate, and a house near Arrowhead Lake.
A mountain cabin.
I said a house.
A cabin is a house.
Yes, but a house isn't always a cabin.
Honestly, you people. Stop freeloading at my expense and get on my Patreon. In 1945, at a time when most was celebrating, the FDA, which can be thought of as the AMA's bastard son, began mudslinging against spectrochrome, a device made to heal people via the use of colour created by Dinshar Gardiali. The device worked by projecting coloured light onto the body of the patient, which would correspond with either oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, or carbon, which under the principles of chromotherapy had to be balanced for the body to function normally. We have some footage of Mr. Gardiali using it. The FDA stated, "It was aluminium slide projection mounted on a stand." Dinshar was then charged with advertising the device across state lines. He lost the case and was given a 5-year probation. 5 years and 1 day later, he began selling lamps that he said had no curative or therapeutic value. But in 1951, the AMA paid a visit to his lab and tore his inventions apart as if they were at the demo derby. Personally, I suspect this is because the American police couldn't spot the difference between Indian and Spanish cultures and thought they were having a piñata party. Age 78, Dinshar was then charged for 3 years. In 1958, a permanent injunction was issued against the spectrochrome, but in spite of the mileage he'd gained, Dinshar kept selling the devices in New Jersey during his mid-80s. Remember everyone, you're only as old as you feel. You starting to see a pattern here? I learned during research that psychopaths tend to gravitate towards high-paying positions, such as the medical trade. In 1940... Don't look at me like that. In 1949, Harry sued Fishbein for slander.
Slander is spoken. In print, it's libel.
Sued him for libel, at the end of which Fishbein and the AMA lost. 2 different courts identified them as a monopoly, and the press eviscerated them. Fishbein's jet-set life came to a sudden end, as he admitted he'd never treated a patient once in his life. Another secret we learned about Nikita Khrushchev is that he... No, wait, that's not him. There we go. Another secret we learned is that Fishbein failed anatomy in school, and barely graduated on a basic level. The dressing down didn't stop there, as he admitted that the paste he called brutal did cure cancer from what he'd seen. In the absence of the office moron, the AMA continued its signature moves. As the tentacles of the AMA expanded as though we were all part of an oversized hentai, the FDA began screwing over Wilhelm Reich, who many return viewers will know invented the organometer, which he was using to cure cancer. Side note that in our research we've been told by many people that the organometer dramatically reduces chronic and period pain. If you are suffering from either, then you are dismissed from class and may learn how to create one using this link. If you don't have either, then sit down and pay attention. Something that should be highlighted is that Reich spent the early 1950s enabling people to sneaky feel the underage at the Orgonomic Infant Research Institute. No action was taken against Reich for this by the AMA or FDA. However, when he began upstaging medicine, their moral code stepped in as they drew the line. Reich was jailed for shipping orgonomic devices between states, and then he got old and died. Crybiozin was the next target for the AMA's rampage, which is a surprising twist as for once it was not a sound or light-related beam, nor an electromagnetic device, but a pharmaceutical drug. Add friendly fire to the AMA's classic hits. In 1963, Senator Douglas's committee found that the report the government made on crybiozin was unfair, inaccurate, and prejudiced, stating also that the Cancer Institute imposed unduly harsh and severe standards of judgment upon crybiozin. The report went even further in saying that the microscopic image the FDA released to the press that they said showed identical spectrograms for creatine and crybiozin was a misrepresentation of the truth. I've heard plenty of excuses during this research, but these are the dumbest so far. We also discovered that the Nason's beam is banned in the United States, along with also known as and that was challenged by the FDA in relation to his work on. This isn't a joke, this is actually what we have to deal with regularly. Mr. Kent and Mr. Falloon created the Life Extension Foundation in 1980 and were raided by the FDA, who charged them with 56 offences and dragged them through a long, expensive court trial. In the end, the FDA failed to land a single punch, and both walked out with no convictions. You know, I'm shocked that the AMA or FDA never made any movies glorifying themselves, as psychopaths are also attracted to the filmmaker trade. On October the 12th, Stop laughing at me, you jackals! On October the 12th, 1976, a small group of chiropractors filed a lawsuit against the AMA and other medical associations named Wilk vs. AMA for antitrust suit. Because of the AMA's boycott on chiropractics, many chiropractors, including Dr. Chester Wilk, were not able to refer patients to access diagnostic imagery or refer patients for medical care when necessary. They led the lawsuit against the following. This culminated in 1990 with the AMA losing, meaning hospitals could now employ chiropractors. After 8 decades, the stranglehold was no more. This covers some of the medical industry's finest moments. Now a big question. How much do you trust mainstream medicine at this point? Post your before and after in the comments section. Oh, also, I recently got my PhD in psychology from Sandhurst, and I have this to tell you. This video has a lot in common with the pair of legs. The more you spread them, the more joy goes around. Now get sharing. Hello, my acolytes. At this point, it's hard to say whether their arses or my foot came off worse. But thank you all for watching. Also, if you want to see more of my antics, check out the Above Below show, which can be found in the description. I do hope I kept you entertained, and would love to hear your thoughts on the video as a whole. Click here to see our iceberg video, or click here to see our documentary on Royal Raymond Rife. Thanks for watching.